Hey, this is Kelly Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. So this video is going to be for those property managers or those people who are co-hosts who may be in long-term rentals or short-term rentals, but you want to move into the midterm rental space. I'm going to name some things that are similar between all of those spaces. And I'm also going to name some differences, particularly between the long-term rental management and the midterm rental management. Now, the reason why I'm doing this video is because I have been looking for a property manager myself for my midterm rentals, but I'm having a challenge finding the right property manager that has what I'm looking for and charges the price that I'm looking for. That is why I'm coming up with this, because a lot of property managers don't really understand that there is a difference between managing long-term rentals and midterm rentals. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the similarities, right? So you still have to find a tenant, so market for tenants, do a screening process, do a check-in, check-out, or move-in, move-out process. Make sure you are handling communications with your tenants and guests and their requests, making repairs if necessary, handling the checkout or move-out process, and then also making sure the property is in a clean condition and ready to be rented again. These are all similarities, but they are handled in different ways. So let's go ahead, and we're focusing on, again, long-term rentals and midterm rentals. And let's talk about the differences when it comes to managing those properties. So we're starting with marketing, right? So for long-term rentals, you usually have certain sites that you can market to for long-term rental people, right? Your tenants. Well, you're still going to market, but you're marketing on different platforms, and you also have to make some different connections with different businesses so that you can try to keep the property occupied. So, of course, with long-term rentals, a person is usually renting for at least about 1 year, but with midterm rentals, they're renting anywhere from 3 months to 6 months on average. But it is considered a midterm rental if they're renting for 30 days or longer, right? So we are going to have to do some different things and use some different strategies whenever you're finding guests for your midterm rentals. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind as a property manager. The second thing is going to be the screening process. Now, depending on who's staying in the property, you may have different screening processes. Yes, normally you still do your background check and your credit check, but sometimes you may have to change it up. So sometimes you're dealing with people who already have a background check. They may be coming through a relocation company or some other type of agency where they've already received a background check. You may be able to request that background check and just do a credit check, or you may be able to verify employment. So there are other ways that you can screen a potential tenant for midterm renting. Keep that in mind, that you have to be open and flexible with that part. The next thing you want to think about is the lease agreement, or just an agreement in general. So with long-term rentals, yes, you have your standard lease, but with midterm rentals, you have to alter your lease just a little bit. I personally use month-to-month leases, but there are some people who don't use leases and they use agreements. I choose to use leases just because I know that that will have the standard legal language for my state, and that it will hold up in court if I ever have to go there, which I hope not, right? But that is a little bit of a difference. You are really going to be dealing with a smaller lease term, so you're using those month-to-month leases, or you could use a lease with a start date and end date, but it's just going to be a shorter term lease. So that would be a little bit different than your long-term rentals. Now, when it comes to moving in or checking in, that is going to be different, right? Normally with our midterm rentals, we have self-check-in. Now, some people may choose to check their guests in manually and meet them at the property, but most of the time people are doing self-check-in, which is going to be different than a long-term rental. Usually with long-term rentals, you do a walkthrough, you do an inspection, make sure they check off everything, make sure they have the keys, and someone is physically there making sure that happens. But that is going to be different with midterm rentals. Unless the host really wants that to happen, then that is something you need to put in your agreement, and you may need to charge a little bit more for that, because that would require you to go to the property a little bit more. That is a difference. The other thing is checking in on guests. So with long-term rentals, you usually have your tenant in there. You don't really bother them or check in on them. They contact you if there's a problem, and that's the only time you guys communicate. But with midterm rentals, you do need to check in on the guests, make sure everything is okay, Make sure they're aware of things happening. So for example, if there is a internet outage in the area, if there's a power outage in the area, just making sure they're aware of that and what's happening, because those things could affect them. So there is going to be more communication with your midterm rental guests. Now, when it comes to repairs, that is going to be the same. Repairs just come up out of the blue. But some additional things that you may not think about would be some people who get locked out. You would have to handle those situations. Normally with a long-term tenant, you don't have to go to the property for something like that. They usually are good about not getting locked out, or they have other people who may have a key in their family or their circle that they can contact. They don't normally contact the property management company. But when it comes to midterm rentals, they're going to contact you first. If something happens and that battery on that lock goes dead, or somehow they got locked out or they lost the key, you're going to have to address that immediately and go make sure that they can get into the property. Now, the same as I talked about earlier with the check-in, usually with midterm rentals, people are doing self-checkouts. Now, that's going to be different once again, because with the long-term rental, property management companies usually do a inspection and, at the end of the lease, making sure everything's okay. And they may do another walkthrough with the tenant, or they may just do a walkthrough by themselves, but they definitely do a full walkthrough of the property, making sure everything is in working order and there isn't anything that needs to be deducted from the deposit. Now, with the midterm rental, you do still have to check the property out, but you could make this the responsibility of your cleaners if you would like to, but I do not personally trust that, because my cleaners don't know everything that's in the property like I do. So I personally walk my properties once someone has checked out, just to make sure everything looks okay. So that may be something you need to do as well, but that would be something you would need to talk to the host about it if that is a requirement of theirs. But that is something to consider. The next part of this is cleaning the property. As the property management company, you will be responsible for scheduling those cleanings and making sure those cleanings are done correctly and that there's not any issues before the next guest or tenant checks in. This is different from long-term rentals. Yes, you do get the property cleaned for the next tenant, but it's not that big of a rush and it's not that critical. Usually you already have people on staff or people you already work with as vendors who will clean the properties for you. That could be the same for midterm rentals, but you will have more of a schedule for those cleaners. So they will be cleaning on a consistent basis depending on how many midterm rentals you have to manage. So you have to keep track of those scheduled cleanings to make sure everything is being done in a timely fashion. Now that we've talked about some similarities and some differences, let me give you some tips as far as how you should think about structuring your pricing. Now, when it comes to midterm rentals, there should be several tiers, because there are different types of hosts out here that require different things from a property manager. So for example, there may be a host that wants to have you manage the entire process. They don't want to do anything but collect the check, which is what you're used to with your long-term rentals, and that's fine. You charge accordingly for that. But then there are going to be hosts like myself who can handle the online part of the business or the technical part, but I need someone to handle the physical part, going to the properties, checking in on everything, going to respond to emergencies or repairs. Handling all of the physical part of the business is what I'm looking for. That should be a different price. So you need to talk to the host, find out exactly what they want you to be responsible for, and then price yourself according to that. Now, the third tier you should have is one where you actually handle all of the online part. So this would be more of a co-hosting situation where you handle all of the online part and the owner or the host may handle the physical part. So that's another set of responsibilities that you have to handle. And again, you have to price that accordingly. So having at least those three tiers would be a great benefit to your company and will win you business, because that is what people are really looking for. Now, when it comes to the pricing of those tiers, normally property managers charge on average 10% to manage a long-term rent. With those structures or those pricing tiers that I just gave you, you have to think about how you want to price those and what percentage you should use according to what you're going to be doing, right? So short-term rentals, a co-host can usually charge 20%, maybe a little bit more to co-host a short-term rental. So for midterm rentals, you need to kind of come up with a happy medium to make sure that it makes sense. So you need to look at what exactly the host is bringing in on the property and make sure your management efforts make sense according to that property. You can't take too much of a profit from the host because then they won't hire you because they're not making enough money, right? So we want to think about those type of things. Put yourself in the shoes of the host and see what makes sense and come up with your pricing according to that. Now, if you don't want to do a percentage, you can do a flat rate. Charge a flat rate to manage midterm rentals. That might work out in your favor. So if you have those 3 tiers, have a flat rate for those 3 tiers, and that could work out for everybody and be a win-win situation. So think about that. If you are thinking about being a property manager or co-host for midterm rentals, I hope you could take these tips and this information I provided in this video and work with the information and make it your own. Come up with some good tiers to price yourself at so that you can get more properties on your roster and make more money in your property management business. I hope it helps you guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. I am having a live workshop in St. Louis on October 21st of 2023. So if you guys would like to attend, make sure you check out the description. The link is in the description below. So that's all I have for you today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.